Welcome. Who in the heck am I? A stranger? No. Mine's Bob Kirk. I'm a chaplain, but I was trained to be a celebrant, which I never thought I would be, never thought I'd be a chaplain. It's funny how when God puts you somewhere and you find yourself there and you go, how did I get here? But he got you there. I was a professional baseball player, police officer, worked in Hollywood with Elvis. Silicon Valley in the computer days, I introduced Bill Gates to Steve Jobs. I was there at the headwater back in the 70s. Retired. My wife used to be a funeral arranger for a company, and I used to, part-time, would hand out the service folders. Till one day I sat in the back and would listen to some of the people that took over the podium here. And I've been a Christian since I was 9 years old. And I sat in the back and started realizing that, boy, this isn't a pulpit. It's a podium. It's about this. This is where the rubber meets the road. I don't have an agenda. I'm not here to preach. I can preach. I can preach for hours. I made 17 pages of notes. John Paul asked me, he says, are you going to say a few words? Yeah. We're here to celebrate a life. But we're here something that's even deeper than that, and that is when you say celebrate the life. You know, I'll be quoting from so many different people, but the Bible says this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad. And you go, holy cow, Chaplain Bob, how can I rejoice and be glad in a day like this when, with all the turmoil and things that go in our lives, the last thing you needed on your plate was to lose someone of this value. Of this value. I'd like to open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, I just come to you with this thanksgiving for Bernice's life. Thank you for loaning her to us. Thank you for holding her in your hand. We thank you for the value that she brought today, Lord, as we bring honor and respect and dignity to her and her life and her values and her belief and who she was. Lord, I pray that you protect the family as we hold our hearts close, that this is a loss, but it's also a gain. Lord, we value life and we thank you for it. Lord, lift this up. I pray you cover my words, you cover people's hearts with comfort. Let there be assurance, Lord, that all is well. Lord, we just thank you for this day in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Bernice, Florence, Hokanson, Cox, Rowsell, a woman who loved her family, friends. She loved sunshine, shopping. She was a great baker. She'd love to go anywhere. She was also one who was known to could express herself and get her opinions across. Sometimes as we get older, we don't put our foot in other people's lives. We put our input, we put our what we think will help. And sometimes that seems like it can be a bit nosy. I'm that way. But I think it's just trying to pass on. It's all love. It's all love. Out there in the foyer, there's the card that has some of her history. I'm going to be talking about a lot of her history. But she had a beautiful smile and laughter. You saw it in this where she's eating that Taco Bell. I love it. I love it. You know what? They're not that big anymore. But to watch her laugh, Leslie, who has been my partner, when I say my partner, if it hadn't been for Leslie, she's given me so much insight. Because what I'm here for, it's a spirit. This is a heart walk. I went to a retreat years and years ago. A man I respected, a guy named Chuck Smith, if you listen to him on Christian radio, Calvary, he started the Calvary movement. he had a vision in front of about 300 guys, and I never met him, didn't know him. He came up to me and he says, I don't know why, he said, but the Lord wanted me to tell you, he says, you will walk with people through the valley of the shadow. And I said to myself, oh my goodness, how am I going to do that? I don't want to advertise, I don't want to go about it. To me, it's not a business. God says, I'll send you the ones I want you to have. I always thought that was a profound time in my life. There's a ripple and a pond effect with Bernice. Her life touched thousands, I would say thousands of people in 88 years. You touch a lot of people. She touched me. Our paths crossed. She was a mother. She was known as a mother, a mother-in-law, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, a great-great-grandmother, an aunt, a great-aunt, a great-great-aunt, and a neighbor. She was loved, and there are special memories that are etched forever in each of your lives. You know, as a public speaker, I learned that you will retain only about 10 to 15% of anything I say today. Einstein would only retain 20% of what he said down and heard. He would retain 20% of that. What I hope that you retain in that 10 to 15%, which by the way, my wife says I have about a 1%. I have selective hearing. But I hope what you grab there is there's an essence here of the value of a human life. And you can see God's character will help us through our walk, but also not only appreciate who she was and what she gave, but a value that we each go through this cycle. Today, you know, many of us, a lot of young people I know, I talk about this thing. If you've ever held a kite, flying a kite when you're a kid, when I was a kid, we had to make our kites from balsa wood and newspapers, use my dad's ties or something for the tail. Now you can go get them, they're already, you don't even have to fly them, you just open the box and they fly by themselves. Or how about a balloon? When you were a child, they had a special balloon, and all of a sudden the wind kicks up like with your kite. And suddenly, I love this too, by the way, this is funny. This is her. Look at this. When I say the queen, I don't mean anything disrespectful, but look at this. She's into it. That's lovely. That's lovely. But I'll tell you what, if that's the steak at Roadhouse, they have another thing. If you get dessert, they put it around your neck. Am I right? Do people know what that was? I don't have to bring it up, but every bathroom has one. Okay. Kites and balloons. When it blows away, you try to grab that kite string. And you see it, and you can't get it. And I don't care how old you are, young or old, when that kite string drifts away and you can't reach it, there's this feeling of, oh, you watch it fly away. Right there. I hope today, by the end of the service today, what happens is you get that kite string back. You get it back. As you know, the agenda, because of this pandemic that's going on and with scheduling and things like that, we'll be getting together again, some of us in March, for what I call the end of the road. And I have a story out there at the cemetery that I'll bring that up when we're there. But, you know, William Wordsmith said this: the best portion of a good woman's life is her little nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and love. Winnie the Pooh said, sometimes the smallest things take up the most room in your heart. And as a hospice chaplain, I was a hospice chaplain for a couple of years until I thought this is just something it's a very tough situation to be in when you're walking with people. But I got to get in real close with people and be able to talk to the person who was going on that journey was walking through the valley, I would be in there close with them, and I'd ask them what was important, what did you value? Just, they want to talk, they need to talk. And this pandemic has caused people to be isolated, and you can't get in there and say goodbye to loved ones. I'm dealing with a young family that people have just swallowed in guilt because they weren't able to get in to say goodbye. It robs us. But today, we're saying goodbye. But as a hospice chaplain, I asked them, and usually it was 3, possibly 4 things that were the most important. Of course, if you're a Christian, that's very, very, very important to that. When you're in that, you're walking that path. Family was number 1. Family was the most important thing. Friends. Friends were number 2, because sometimes family and friends transition, they come together, it's all one. What do they say, relatives are fate, friends are chosen. Some family members, they come and go. Some friends come and go and some stay. But family is so, so important. But also what they said was respect. One thing that they really wanted, that their life mattered and there was some respect. My dad says, you just don't get respect. It's not something they hand out. Here, you've got respect now. My dad says you earn respect. You earn it. It's not free, but you get it. And I can look across the crowd. I know how many more people would be here today if it wasn't for the things that are going on in this world right now. But I can feel that she had that respect and she had that love. 3 things at a funeral that you carry about at a funeral is what you bring, what you leave, and what you take. You bring your hearts, your love, your memories. You do take memories. There will be memories. This service today, I guess you would have to say it will all roll in around to what they call, January 30th, 2021. The day she passed. Will stick with you. This day will be coupled with that. You will remember this day the rest of your life. Even without films. I remember as 10 years old going to my grandmother's funeral. I can tell you that was many, many years ago. I remember what I was wearing. I remember where people sat. It had that kind of an impact. We bring our hearts, our love. We leave what's important. Regrets. Woulda, coulda, shouldas. The biggest robber of the greatest gifts we have is our memories of someone. And if you have regrets, that gets in the way. And in this room, I pray for, like I say, I pray for peace and comfort. We hear about that word comfort a lot in the Bible. We say, what is that word? A lot of times we get confused. We take today's words and try to apply it to what the Bible was saying. And the Greeks, when they wrote that Bible, they transitioned their language. I used to think that comfort was like the easy chair. Advertisements, they advertise comfort chair, comfort. And yet, if you fall asleep in one of those easy chairs, your back hurts. It's not comfortable. You cannot sleep in it all night. It's not comfortable. The Greek word for comfort that they use for this verse is like a newborn baby who's been fed, cleaned, wrapped in a fleece blanket, being held close by the mother and a father, arms draped around all of them. That is the word comfort that God gives. Bless those who mourn, for they will be comforted. That's all of us who feel that. Psalm 34:18 says this, the Lord is near to those who have a broken heart and saves such as have a contrite spirit. That's another word, contrite. So what the heck is contrite? In a sense, maybe So I looked up. Contrite spirit that God will save. It's a feeling or sorrow, or showing sorrow or remorse for a shortcoming. For a shortcoming. A regret. You know, Bernice was a believer. I've done so many services. I've done service, you'd be surprised what I've done. The type of people from hardcore motorcycle gangs to different religions and different walks of life. Everybody feels the pain the same way. But a Christian burial, someone who believes, is peace beyond understanding. Because there's that thing called hope. Faith, trust, love. Hope that you will see her again. She had a favorite verse. The family picked this one. 1 Corinthians 15:37. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. When she accepted Christ, when she grew up in her life, and I'll get into that momentarily, but it was a very interesting time. But as a young child, she heard Bible, she heard prayers, she saw all these things going on in her life, she saw things going on around her. Somewhere along in her lifetime, she made the internal, physical, spiritual connection that I choose to believe and follow Christ. Whether you remember it or not, when that happens, the Bible's full of promises. 30,000 promises in the Bible. 30,000 promises. One of them is, I will never leave or forsake you, comma, ever. Ever. Never leave you, ever. My favorite verse, but thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. I love that verse. Another favorite verse family asked was the 23rd Psalm. You hear that at most all funerals you go to. It's just about, they always put out, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. We all know that just about by heart. As a child, I learned how to repeat that, like the Lord's Prayer. Very interesting about that, what's really key for a lot of us to remember, when David said that, when he wrote that prayer, the key verse is the very beginning. The Lord is my shepherd. This is what he's saying, I will fear no evil. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow. Here's the hard part. A lot of people think they're people who are alone and they're isolated. They're not. The Holy Spirit who is indwelled in you goes with you, keeps going. You are never, ever alone in that darkest of times. If the Lord is your shepherd. And today we celebrate Bernice's life, her heart walk. I never met her, like I said, but I've been a companion of her over the last couple of days with some of the photos that Leslie has sent to me. It's drawn me in to get a visualization of who she was. But this was a big shadow that crossed a lot of people's lives. I want to get into the family right now, but when someone does their duty, like let's say a military veteran, we call them honorable. When someone does their duty in the face of danger, usually a first responder, perhaps a police officer, different things, we call them heroes. When someone goes beyond the call of duty, we call them mother. Wyatt Earp, somebody may have heard of Wyatt Earp. Back in the day, Wyatt Earp, a famous lawman, said this about family. There's nothing as sacred as honor, and nothing so loyal as a love of family. It all comes down to this. Blood is thicker than water, and when it comes to family, everyone else is a stranger. Those who preceded her at death were her parents, her 4 brothers, Bruce and Don. Daughters Barbara and son-in-law Thomas Fellows. 2 grandbabies, Rhonda and Courtney. Hardest thing for a parent to lose a child. No, and even harder is to lose a grandchild. To lose a spouse. She was no stranger to pain and to loss, and yet she held her head high and kept going. And those left behind, Terry Cox and his wife Laura, Dee Dee, Linda Hoggett, Lori and Michael, I want to pronounce this, is Gruhike?
Broken.
Thank you. John and Melinda Cox, Leslie and Hector Romero. Thank you guys. Hey, I'm from Hope, Arkansas. The hardest thing I have, and my wife gets on me, and that's why I make notes. Remembering pronouncing names. It's nothing personal. That's fine. I'll remember. Leslie was easy. All it was spelled different.
Suck it out, Leslie.
The loss of mother. All of you who have lost a mother, and to those that I just called out, there's nothing that I can say can begin to fill the void of the loss of your mother. She brought you into the world, she nurtured you, she cleaned you, she fed you, she prayed for you to the day she died. She was always there, always available, always standing strong with her love, support, arms to hold you. There was a country song about daddy's hands. All you gotta do is reverse it, and it was mama's hands. They were big and strong, but soft and gentle. Sometime during our point when we're growing up, because I was a teenager and I saw it, I reached the point in my life, I had wonderful parents, but when I turned 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there, I thought, these people are too old, they don't understand what I'm going through, they're old fuddy-duddies. That happens to a lot of us. Sometimes it splits families. But you know, when I turned 20, I started getting my own family, 2021, started having children. I thought, holy cow, how really important and smart my parents were. Yes, they love to give us their advice, but it's not needling. Sometimes we think it's needling, but it's just love. It's just love, unconditional love. And those of grandparents, whew. Grandparents. They call it golden years when you hit the age of 50, I believe, or 55, AARP, the group that finds you. Somehow they find you when you turn 50, you start getting magazines on how to live long and things like that. But AARP, they talk about the golden years. I say, what the heck is that? Well, a golden year is when you wake up and you don't hurt. Perhaps you're with a spouse that you married years ago and you've gotten to that beautiful time in life where you're comfortable, you're yourself. I looked at Bernice's marriage, I believe 49 years to Bruce. You know, the average life, the length of today's marriages, 2021, statistics say that marriage will last 3.5 years. My cell phone will last longer. Well, not anymore. They last 16 months, and you got to get a new one. Those people, when you hit a certain, after you've been married 10, 15, 20 years or so, you start to really feel it really settles into a good rhythm. And you know what God meant when he said it wasn't right for Adam not to have a helpmate. You get that, you understand how valuable that is from a man's standpoint, given from a man's standpoint. But I salute Bernice for that. But grandchildren, that's the golden years. And I read this, 26 grandchildren. But yet there's more. 29 and a half great-grandchildren. So that means there's a baby in the womb. I was talking to Leslie about what I see, that God is such, we can't put God in a box and say, well, this would never happen. But God says, my thoughts, my ways are higher than yours. You can think whatever you want, but I can go above that. So I think ships passing in the night. You got a baby in the womb, and you have someone who's passed. Something comes. There's something unique about this next child. I don't know who is going to be gifted with this child, but you might see grandma's eyes. Great-great-grandma's eyes. 5 generations. 5 generations. It is wonderful. But I want to say this about this. There's a picture here. I saw it when I watched in the back. Bernice is holding this tiny baby. And it'll pop up here. There's a thing called the bridge of life. Every one of you are on a bridge of life. Now we get back to this thing called family. On the day that she was born, May 1st, 1932, somebody picked her up and held her. That heartbeat that started, in some cases now DNA says, there you go. They say you can trace DNA on the woman's side all the way back to one woman. That's a fact. That's science. One woman. Well, I wonder who that is. But that heartbeat, all the people that were around her that held that tiny baby, they're gone. They've gone on down that bridge. They've walked that walk. And as Bernice walked, more and more and more came. But every child that she held, and I'm sure she held all, do the math, over 50, call it 60? It goes on, and that's the value of family and the value of your roots. The strongest trees withstand the strongest storms. This family has had some storms. Whoever put this together did a good job. The grandbabies and great-grandbabies are the candles on the cake. But also, a torch is being passed sometime. Right now, the legacy of this woman and her parents and her greats that keeps on going all the way down to the young people. And I like to talk to the young people sometime about, hey, you have to, what's important is you remember her. You tell your great-grandchildren about Bernice. And that bridge of life is niece and nephews. Wow. I had an aunt, my mom's sister, who was like a best friend. I could talk to her about anything. Not really having a grandmother who I just shared, but I had 28 cousins. And it seemed like my grandmother never had enough time, and she died at the age of 50. So it was like, I never really had her as a grandmother. But how important, what the value of a grandmother, but my aunt was able to kind of pick up that slack with my mom's older sister. I could talk to her about anything. I could tell her secrets, things I wouldn't dare tell my mom and dad, but I could tell her. That's the value of older people and family. She was also no stranger to strangers. I was heard that she had the personality that she could pick up a conversation. You know, you meet some people, if you're in a bank line or a food line, somebody in front of you back in the day when you can converse. And you would start talking to him and go, well, that's an interesting person. They say this, I think Bernice is one of these kind of people. It takes a minute to find a special or unique person. It takes an hour to appreciate them. A day to love them. and a lifetime to forgive. I was a stranger. I'd like to ask now, I think, son John Paul has a few words to say. And if someone else, if you would like to say a few words after that, we'll keep it open for a moment. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Bob. That was great. Hope I get through this. Chapter 1 of 7, Childhood. Wall Street crashed in 1929, marking the start of the Great Depression. That was the world Mom was born into. Florence Bernice Hokanson was born in Salt Lake City, Utah in 1932 to Father Henry Hokanson, a meat butcher, and to Mother Florence Hannah Downham Proctor. She was 40 years old at the time. Now, Mother Florence and Daughter Florence both have the same first name, so Mother Florence went by the nickname Floss, and Daughter Florence went by her middle name, Bernice. Bernice was born into a family of 4 older brothers. She was the baby girl, the only girl. Her parents knew how to raise 4 rowdy boys, but they weren't sure what to do with the little girl. They figured, well, we'll just keep doing what we've been doing. It worked so far. Grandpa Hokanson liked boxing. He would spar in the ring with his prize fighter brother, Axel. Mom's parents raised her to fight back. I remember Mom giving me the same advice she heard her father give to his kids. Grandpa Hokanson would say, if anybody picks on you, double up your fist and punch him in the nose. During the Great Depression, especially those cold Utah winters, Grandpa tried to keep food on the table for his hungry family. And he sometimes got a few oxtail bones from work at the meatpacking plant and brought them home for soup for his family. Grandpa taught his kids that a good steak was the best meal a person could eat. Mom was 7 years old when World War II started, 9 years old when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. All 4 of her older brothers served in the armed forces. When Mom learned to set the dinner table, she always poured a big, tall drink of iced tea for her dad and her brothers. Grandpa said, we have the Hokanson thirst, and they all liked a big, tall glass. Conversations at the Hokanson dinner table always included talk of the war effort and of rationing. That was Mom's childhood, and it impacted her for the rest of her life. Chapter 2, Marriage and Motherhood. By the time Mom was 13, all that negativity of World War II ended, and the GIs started to come home. During Mom's teen years, the baby boom started. Hope was in the air. Everyone was getting married and having babies. Mom met Dad in school, and they started dating. They got married 71 years ago this month, February 21, 1950. Mom was 17, Dad was 19. Their son Terry was born a year later, then daughter Linda a year after that. After Linda was born, the Cox family of 4 packed all their belongings into a small trailer and headed west, moved out to beautiful, sunny, and warm Southern California to find their fortunes. Daughter Barbara was born in 55, and daughter Lori was born in 57. Mom, Dad, and 4 children, the Cox family. Chapter 3, Cox family number 2. A surprise happened 10 years later. I was born. Nobody saw that coming, and Leslie followed 3 years after me. Mom and Dad had 6 kids, teenagers, and babies. The year I turned 5, Terry and Linda moved out and got married. When I was 9, Barbara and Lori also moved out, leaving just Leslie and me as the remaining ones at home. When you think about it, Mom and Dad raised two families. It was the older group with the older siblings, and Leslie and me in the second group. We were Cox family number 2. Chapter 4, Pirate Parties. During my 10, 11, and 12-year-old birthday parties, I had this running theme of pirates. Think Pirates of the Caribbean. Mom loved hosting parties, and she delighted to see me and my birthday friends all dressed up in pirate costumes. We had lots of fun pirate decorations, and we had pirate-themed games. We would dig for treasures in the sandbox and have a costume contest and throw beanbags at the box that was cut out like a skull and crossbones. One year, Mom ordered a black birthday cake for me from the bakery. It was fantastic. It was a beautiful pirate flag. It was incredible. And they were fun parties, and Mom was really the inspiration for them, and I was grateful. Chapter 5, Vacations. We all lived in California, but Mom and Dad had friends and family in Utah. So most of our summer vacations were family road trips to Utah in the truck. Whew. Arriving at the destination was great. The journey, not so much. It was hot, it was dry, it was boring, especially driving through the desert. Our family sometimes stopped along the way in Las Vegas because Mom's brother, Uncle Kent, lived there. It was a good place to stop after hours of driving through the dry, hot desert. There's a funny family story I want to share. One time we were visiting Uncle Kent, and we were all so dry and thirsty, and he brought out this large tray of big, tall, ice-cold drinks. Lots of flavors to choose from. Grandpa Hokanson would have liked those big, tall drinks. Well, Mom picked one up and guzzled it down to quench her hot, dry thirst. And a few minutes later, Uncle Kent said, "Sis, will you have another beer?" And she said, "Oh, Kent, you know I don't drink beer." And Uncle Kent laughed and said, "You just downed that beer like it was nothing." Must have been the Hokanson thirst. Chapter 6, Moving and Storage Garages. From the house where I was born until the house where I finally moved out, my family moved 15 times. Every 18 months or so, we would move to a new rental. And each time we moved, we would box up all of our belongings and put them into a storage garage. That, of course, made things easier when we finally moved because we didn't have as much to move. But we never fully vacated all those storage garages. In fact, we moved so many times that some of the boxes way in the far back of the garage hadn't been opened in years. By the time Dad died, they had so many boxes and things that it took 4 large storage garages to hold all that. So for years, Mom and I would work on our Saturdays together going through old boxes and eliminating stuff. It was so tiring, but I treasured the time that I was able to spend with Mom, and it was rewarding knowing that I was able to help her. When Mom and I finally whittled it down to about 1.5 garages left, Hector came to our rescue. We got them all cleared out and closed. It felt like a miracle that that burden finally relieved. At last, no more moving those old storage boxes from the 1960s and 1970s and 1980s and so on. Thank you, Hector. Final chapter number 7, the Romeros. The last 10 years were difficult and often lonely for Mom. We all tried in our own ways to help her out, best we could. But it was Leslie and her family that really helped Mom the most. I know Mom appreciated it. Thank you for helping her, especially during this last year with COVID-19 and her dementia and her failing health. Mom could not have done it without you. From me and my family, and on behalf of all the siblings, thank you, Leslie, and Hector, and your whole family. That's a great one. That was Mom. She loved a good party. May the Lord bless you and love you for your sacrifice and love and service. I love you. Thank you everyone for coming and celebrating this day to remember my mom. Thanks.
Would anybody else like to say a word or two? Well, you get to listen to me. Wow. My wife is Native American. She's First Nation, Choctaw. And I was adopted into the Lakota Sioux out on the Rosebud Reservation years ago. Spent a lot of time with, they call them, white man calls them their medicine men, but that's Hollywood. They were really their holy men. Very deep and strong believers. But they have a wonderful saying for a day like today. That is, your soul would have no rainbows if your eyes had no tears. Tears are a gift. God gives us tears. And today we face the reality of life and the reality of death. The death has occurred and everything is changed by this event. We're painfully aware that life can never be the same again, that relationships once rich are now over. But there's another way to look upon this truth. If life went on the same without the presence of the one who had died, we can only conclude that their life made no contribution, filled no space, it meant nothing. But in Bernice's case, she left behind a place that can't be filled. And that's a high tribute to this woman. High tribute. Life can be the same after you've lost a trinket, but never after you've lost a treasure. And we get down into life and you weigh yourself, what is treasure and what is trinkets. I know as John talked about going through 4 garages, storage bins, and narrowing it down to 1.3, you had to weigh, what do we keep and what do we throw? What's a treasure? What's a trinket? I got a lot of that in my garage, and my grandkids, I've got this shotgun that my dad had. It goes back to my great-grandfather. Old shotgun. I love it. Still wrapped, and I got it locked up and hidden, that kind of thing. And it's like, what good does it? But bottom line is, I have one of my grandsons, my 14-year-old grandson says, "Papa, do you know what that's worth on eBay?" I go, "Oh, that's a trinket. That's not a treasure. It's my treasure, his trinket." But we stop and you think, when someone of value, when someone like this passes, and in cases there'll be some things given away, maybe something that she crocheted, something she sewed, something she knit, something she made. There'll be little what we call heirlooms. But there's other things, the treasure that she's left, and that's memories and an impact on your life, the good, the bad. She left so much for you to carry on, otherwise you wouldn't be here. I've done services, it shakes you to the core about how some families are couples. They're not in this, but 2 people before COVID. 2 people came to celebrate. One was a neighbor and the other was a cousin. The family was so upset. And it's so sad. It's so sad. John gave a great kind of, I had some pages here because I'm a history buff. I love history. I love history. 1934, or 1932, Amelia Earhart made the first cross the ocean. And I can tell you, that got a lot of the guys here. My dad was a pilot. My dad was born in 1914. And he was a pilot. And he says, a woman shouldn't have done that. It should have been, you know, those kind of things. Al Capone was arrested. Franklin Roosevelt was elected, and he would have 3.5 terms. Whoa. Brand new house here in the Inland Empire. Brand new house in 32. $6,500.
Wow.
A car was $600. Average income was $130 a month. A loaf of bread was 7 cents. Some people born that year, besides Bernice, some people you've heard of: Elizabeth Taylor, Debbie Reynolds, Johnny Cash, Loretta Lynn, Barbara Mandel, Jimmy Buffett. Also, the temperature on May 1st, 1932 was 72 degrees. Population was 141,788 that day. It was a Sunday. It was a special day. We heard from John about the brothers growing up during the Dust Bowl. Oh man, I have talked to people who've gone through, my folks came through the Dust Bowl. They came through the Depression. They came out of Arkansas to come out to California. The thing was going nuts in the world. People sometimes didn't know where they were going to get their next meal. I remember my mom and my dad talking. My mom graduated, she made it through the 6th grade. My dad was a high school graduate. Christmas, people didn't get iPads and color TVs or a car. They were lucky if they got a meal or maybe something handmade. But everyone I've talked to said those were the best of times. No TV, no internet, no cell phones. The best of times, because families were so tight, so close. And I'm sure you heard a lot of stories from Bernice, that generation. They talk about walking to school in the snow, uphill, both ways. Both ways. But you know, best times. But also, John mentioned the baby boomers. You know, Samra Chin there, your Bernice, she was not a baby boomer. Oh, well then she must have been from the greatest generation. No. It's funny how people don't really stop. We're too busy doing things, but she came out, she was born between 1925 and 1945. You go, what the heck is that? Wait a minute, the boomers started in 46. The greatest generation ended in 25. Who were these people? What were they called? We got the millenniums. We got all the different names now. They were called the silent generation, the chosen few. Because there were least children born in the United States because of all the things I just mentioned about things that were going on. To have a child was, whew, so few children, plus all the men that were lost in World War II. The chosen few. They went through the formative years during an era of suffering, conformity, but also during post-war happiness. So you got to remember, a lot of things she did and things she believed, the way she carried herself and her values and her beliefs were based upon how you're raised. A lot of people spend days or hours and years in psychiatrists trying to figure out that their mom did this or my dad did that. I couldn't, you know. Remember, you only get 28% of who you are is DNA, is handed down. The other 70 plus is what you make of it. People spend all their time and energy and space about something that happened so far back you can't go back and fix it. Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. You gotta get over it in that case. But this generation, for the Korea and Vietnam generation, the first hopeful drumbeat of civil rights. Women in that generation, they stayed home to raise children, and they worked certain jobs like teachers, nurses, or secretaries. I read this as this is my mom and dad, because I was born in this time frame. Grade school, the biggest complaint in grade school, chewing gum and passing notes. Today, my grandson, when he goes to, he has to go through a metal detector, and they're not looking for gum. They were the big band swing music generation, but they were disciplined, self-sacrificing, and cautious. But boy, they changed America though. That group changed America. She witnessed so much history, like John said. But while she was going through these hard times, she was learning how to survive. That's what they did. You were in a family, you didn't, yes you lived, but you learned how to survive. How to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, keep going. She learned how to sew. She learned how to cook. She learned how to do so many things because of the hard times and the values of those hard times. But she lived by faith, hope, love, and trust. And she passed that on to her children. Like I said, we heard, like John said, during the 50s, name changed from Bernice, she became Mom, toughest job in the world. I know that she was what they call a homemaker. That is such a small word for how tough it is for a woman who stayed home and then raised two generations. How difficult that had to be on not only Bernice and you, John, but on the older ones too. How extremely difficult that had to be. But you know, from 1948 to 1963, a group of people got together in Amsterdam and said it was the greatest time. When was the greatest time to be alive? 2000, they decided this. When was the greatest time to be alive on planet Earth? They said 1948 to 1963 was the greatest time to have been alive. And if you lived in America, boom. You back it off, you lived in Southern California, you had the beaches. Bernice loved Riverside, California. She loved going to the beach where you could make a day trip, leave in daylight, come back in daylight. Try that now. What's it, 4 hours to get to the beach? and then another 4 to find a place to park. And then you get on the 91 freeway out of Orange County, forget it. But she loved going out. That's another story. Name changes. Time stretched on. You know, and all the things that she witnessed, which the things she witnessed and lived, right up to the mask. She got to see the pandemic. She saw the chaos in the presidential election. She sees the government. She sees what her brothers and uncles and cousins during World War II in Korea, and those of us who went to Vietnam, not everybody here went there, but we're starting to see it go pulling apart. We see we see Russia and we see China licking their chops. And we think, as long as we got our internets, we're okay. No. Things will be changing. That's why family becomes very important, really. 2021, it's time to reevaluate the value. But I know this. 1977, I was working in Hollywood at that time and got to go to a premiere of a new movie that had just been released. It was the red carpet. Back in that day, in 1977, they didn't roll out the red carpet. But I was invited. I took my 2 sons. One was 8 and the other one was 5. Went to the Guamish Chinese and we saw a movie they said would change the world. It was called Star Wars. And now that movie seems so old when you see all the new revisions of it. But Star Wars was like, I remember going, boom, the world's changed. Obi-Wan Kenobi. He made a statement in there that even in I thought, wow, that was pretty profound. But he said, he was walking along with people, I don't know what the whole scene was, but he stopped and he goes, I feel there's been a great disturbance in the Force. And that's when Darth Vader could blow up. Millions and January 30th, 2021. January 30th, 2021. There was a great disturbance in his family. It will be felt. It will be felt. She's going to be remembered for so much, and I'm going to take just a few minutes because Leslie shared this. I asked Leslie a few questions. This is the beauty of a daughter. I said, just a few questions. I got back 2.5 pages, and I loved it. I loved it. Because it took me home. It took me to my parents. Mom was a devoted homemaker. She kept a clean and tidy house. Loved to decorate, especially for the seasons. Sometimes the fridge and the cupboards were pretty bare, but she always managed to make a presentation of a warm meal. She loved to bake. She baked bread, pies, cakes, cream puffs, cookies. Anybody here ever taste those? She was a fashion. If she couldn't afford to buy clothes, she made them. She repurposed fabric, drapes, bedspreads, old cloth, and used the fabrics to make something new. I know you guys have all heard this, but this is... She didn't sit there and feel bad. Let's make something. She wasn't a glass half full, half empty. She said, get the full glass. She loved to make the accessories, hats, gloves, heels, and purse. She loved dressing nice and look beautiful. Family tradition of baking, looking at Christmas, like going to school programs and church. She kept this family in church. She left a very valuable treasure. I taught this family a very valuable treasure, and I'll get to that at the end. But I love what Leslie told me about the Christmas tree. One day, the dad came home with a Douglas fir tree with big outspread branches. We all seen them. Dad did the lights. The kids did the ornaments. But Mom took pride with the precious application of tinsel icing. I don't think you can buy it anymore. It says that she would take sometimes a tweezer and drape it over every branch 3 to an inch. They had to hang the same way. And when it was over, take them off, lay them on newspaper. I did this. And then roll it up in newspaper and put it away, and you use that tinsel until it got so crinkled and old and small. And my brother and I, we just throw it on the tree, and that was. The tree was beautiful. She loved getting the compliments on it. She'd stand there, I'm sure, with pride, tell the kids not to walk by too fast because you create a wind disturbance and it causes them to shift. Simple little thing, but that's a great memory. And laying on the floor or the sofa and laying on it, looking up at that tree where it shimmered and shined. While Dad was always in the back on the hi-fi, a thing called the hi-fi. Hi-fi was playing softly in the background. Nat King Cole, Perry Como, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby. We still have those albums. Don't they just bring it back? Oh, she loved going to the beach. It goes on. It's just a great story. Thank you for that. She enjoyed war movies and Western movies, silver screen romances, religious broadcasts. She kept her heart in that. Music of the 40s, country, and gospel. She liked to collect recipes, baking, eating, garage sales, as we heard. It goes on. How she was so observant, so observant to license plates, the numbers, the oddity of buildings, the shapes of buildings. Leslie said all she had to do is, you want to go, and she would go. Didn't care where she was going, get the hat, the gloves, let's go. And out the door she would go. She saw beauty, and she enjoyed that. That's the beauty of this woman. You know, she left big footprints. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, don't go where the path may lead. Go and sit where there's no trail and leave a path. She left footprints in her life for everyone, even for me to look and see, that I could see her footprints and it made sense. She loved life. Life was adventure. There was a country song you usually hear. It came out in the 40s, I think, when any of the big country stars would pass away, they would go. The song was, who's going to fill their shoes? Who's going to fill their shoes? And you think about Bernice. Who's going to fill her shoes? Well, I have to first of all say no one. No one's going to be able to fill her shoes. But all you can do is pull yours up aside and see how well they match with hers. You know, those footprints of hers are love, courage, laughter, and a lever of memories. Memories. There's a thin line now what you folks face, and you probably already have faced it. You have a good memory, but you flip the coin, and it can bring pain. Oh, man. Won't see, you know, pain comes in. That's the enemy trying to rob, just trying to rob you of joy. You know, I had so much to say. What is success? Let's talk about what's Bernice's success. People talk, I have a twin brother, we talk about what's success. He lives in Orange County, lives on the beach, thinks very highly of himself. We talk about what's success. 401k, that car in that garage, those cars in the garage, not a car, but those cars. All the different things. He says that's being successful, but I don't agree with him. But I found that a gentleman wrote this, someone wrote this, a famous person said, what is success? Let's see if Bernice doesn't fall in here just a little bit. See if you can't see your mom, your aunt, your grandmother, your great-grandmother. To laugh often and much. To win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children. To earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends. To appreciate beauty. To find the best in others. To leave the world a bit better. To know that even one life has breathed easier because you live. That is to have succeeded. That is success. And a lot of people in life, they go, I'm searching for my purpose. Or someone say, what's your purpose in life? Or I'll say, what's my purpose? Sometimes you wake up like me. I woke up 10 years ago and said, I'm going to be a chaplain. I'm going to do something. Bernice, I think from the day one she knew a purpose, and that was just to be this woman of God, after God's own heart, a woman who would instill the rights and wrongs in her children and raise 2 generations of children. And I know how difficult that is, because I had retired from Hewlett-Packard. My wife and I bought our nice ranch in Colorado, and we were going to settle down, and then our daughter got pregnant, and then she couldn't raise our son. We had to raise a grandson. And I remember going to grade school, taking him in, and people would say, hey, he's not your dad, he's too old to be your dad. Bottom line was, he wasn't doing good in math, and I did a math, he had homework, and I helped him and checked all his answers, and we did multiplications, and every answer was right. Even after I finished, I looked on my calculator. I showed him how to do it. He brings the paper home because I wanted to see his A. Let's see your paper today. He had an F. All the answers are right, we had an F. I said, let's go see that teacher. Teacher says, oh, the answers are right, but the process is wrong. You're not using new math. He says, you need to go back to school and learn new math. I said, I'm not going back to school. I went to school in the 50s, the 40s, and the 50s. But how difficult it is to do that, to juggle and try to pass on to the generation gap. And Bernice did that. She took care of that, kept it all together. Okay. I love what Leslie put at the very bottom of her letter to us. Mom taught us all about having a personal relationship with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We read the Bible, and we prayed and sung in worship to the Lord. That was a priority with Mom. Which brings up to, she's not here. It's not goodbye. It's I'll see you later. Why? What a woman, you guys. Back to, in closing here, I want to talk about Bernice. We saw, listened to some of the music she loved, the big band era, her heroes. It's a part of us. It defines kind of who we are. It defines our generation. If you grew up in the 50s, you had the Bill Haley rock and roll. Maybe you had some of early Elvis. You know, you take all these generations all the way through, and now of course we get into the 20s or really the 2000s, and it's kind of hard to differentiate what music is. I don't know what she thought about rap. But it must have been like a lot of people go, I can't get the beat. How do you dance to that? It would not play on American Bandstand. But anyway, sometimes defines who we are. You know, from her vast collections of the big bands in the 30s and 40s and some country music and the different music she listened to, I put this together pulling some of the titles. From her musical library, some songs. Till Then, Thank You for Being My Friend, Hold On Tight to Your Dreams, Remember Me Till the End of Time. And with this, heroes. We all have some heroes, especially in the movies. Growing up, we had heroes. She was growing up in the 30s and the 40s and 50s, and it said she liked westerns, she liked war movies. John Wayne had to be in there. So John Wayne had to be in there. Also, again, a guy named Hopalong Cassidy, Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, Gene Autry. I mean, Lash LaRue. I could go on. Crash Corrigan, Bob Steele. We all grew up with these guys. These were heroes. Funny when they got shot with a white shirt on, no blood. And I showed that to my grandkids. They go, "What's that?" I said, "That's real." Roy Rogers, Dale Evans. Happy trails to you until we meet again. You come up with this. Cliches. I'm sure you guys have heard the cliches. She's in a better place. Oh, I'll pray for you. Words of comfort. The pain stays. Woulda, coulda, shouldas pop in. And I know that that's not what she would want. You know, sometime in life, words just don't work, but that's all we have to throw at. I won't say, yes, grief, because it is there. You can't hide grief. It's there. But just up against this thing called, it oppresses us. We've lost someone so dear, and they're gone. They're not there anymore. In the holidays and things that roll around, where you always knew where she was, but now she's not there. But I want you to know, and I know that she is in good hands, because God promised her, I have a home for you. Because you believed in me, I'm going to take care of you. And I know that she wanted to get another thing across the chasm, and I think it's so neat because I quoted Winnie the Pooh, and she said that Winnie the Pooh said this, and I think every mother and grandmother and great-grandmother and great-aunt, uncle too, men too, want to get it across to all our children. You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Mom says, I brought you this far, you can make it. Thank you, family. Thank you, guys. Thank you. It's not your normal celebration of life, but life, such a blessing. I lost my mom. She was 60. No, she was not quite even 70 years old when I lost my mother, and my dad was not much older. And you got to have her that much longer. And I always say to young people, man, look, you know, I'll say this too, the 5th commandment, honor your mother and father. Boom, you did. I know that Juan would tell you that there's so many services now, people don't have memorial services more. And this is a sense of honoring. It's not about, it's a hard thing to do. It's so much easier now in today's world, just we'll take care of it later. People, this is yes, it's a tradition, but it's also a railing we hold on to. It keeps us upright. You know, we look for this thing called closure. I don't believe you can close a book on somebody like Bernice. How do you say, well, okay, that's done? Well, yeah, part of it is, the hard part is over, but no, the hard part just begins. This was just all tied up in paperwork and things you have to take care of, and calls and phone calls and cards that got to be sent, acknowledgments. And then when this is all over, the rubber meets the road. And she's walking with us. She moves from there to here. Thank you, folks. I'm going to have Juan come up, you guys. Thank you so much for allowing me to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the family, this time I'd just like to once again thank everyone for coming out, showing your love and support. Now, this does conclude the chapel portion of the services, but I'm not rushing you folks out. Still want to offer everyone here a chance to come pay respect, so we'll have you folks here for a few more minutes, leave the casket open, just give everyone a chance to pay their respects one last time. So, this does conclude the services. May you all continue a blessed day. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
More will probably be coming. Yeah, I don't think they're all here yet.
Okay.
It depends on when they order them off the website. You know,
So when it comes in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Other people would know?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Thanks.